So that brings us to the end of the production. I just want to open it up for any questions. We do have a few quick moments for questions, and I don't think there's anything after us, so we can maybe push that a little bit for anyone that has any questions. So please don't be shy. In the back.
The 4K math library was actually written by a coder, and what it does is it creates inline functions, so everything gets compiled into your source code in the smallest way possible. So you're not calling an external library; it's actually being built in. So pretty much anything that's on the that's actually cheaper on average. Yes, in the back. Well, let me be specific. You have to link to OpenGL because otherwise you can't render anything using OpenGL. But the C standard libraries mainly support routines for coding in C, things like malloc and printf that you don't really need. So removing that one is one thing, but some other things you do need. Like in my 4K that I'm working on, I think I have directsound.dll, I have opengl.dll, and wingdi.dll. Those are the three I have to link to just to get things going.
And another thing I'll mention is that there's tons of other tricks and techniques that we didn't even dive into. And I think that what happens is there's this sort of adoption routine. You figure out this dirty trick, and I do have some dirty tricks that I haven't used yet, so that's why I'm not teaching anyone them yet. But you figure out this dirty trick or this technique, right? So then you exploit it, and somebody says, oh, that's a dirty trick. Then X number of months later, everybody's using it, and it's become a standard technique, right? So I think that there are certain things that you may consider too risky to do. And one of those techniques is import by ordinal, which I'll say, and it's sort of frowned upon. You have a couple of different ways of pulling in libraries. So you have OpenGL or you have DirectX or what have you, okay? And you want to call a function to it. So you may have some code that goes to that library and says, give me function gluesphere, right? You may also have code that says, give me function 12. Well, obviously, having G, L, U, S, P, takes a little more space than 12. The problem is, though, is that the people that write these libraries sometimes change where things are. So 12 may suddenly become a box. So your sphere world, 4 kilobyte intro, with sphere particles or planets, suddenly becomes cube world, right? It's sort of a mock example, but it's possible. Now, OpenGL actually, interestingly enough, says 12 is a sphere, and the standard says 12 is a sphere. So you may be able to take advantage of that technique, but other DLLs, such as DirectX or sound APIs and so forth, don't make the same guarantee. So that always comes back to somebody saying, all right, I'm going to draw the compatibility line here, and for everyone else that runs a new version of the OS that's been service packed this way or what have you, is going to have to run the compatibility version. So you have all these demo coders that are sitting there anxious to get to the compo machine in the hopes of testing their production to make sure they've got their ordinals right. And to be honest, I think at that point you've made a deal with the devil. It's a little too far for me. The compatibility line's a little too, on the left or on the right. It's a little too far from center for me. So that's where I would draw the line personally.
Statically. Yeah. Well, typically you know how much memory you need, right? I'm going to have 5,000 particles in this scene. Therefore, I need an array with 5,000 slots in it. So instead of saying new, array 5,000, you just say static array 5,000 equals 0, and then it'll be allocated by the operating system for 0 cost. Somewhat.
Yep.
Both.
Yeah. Actually, I'll show you. I'll compile one of them. We can compile one, eh?
Well, I guess you could.
Yeah. why not? Actually, maybe, which one's the first one that has crinkler? Is it,
Yeah, it's Nihi one.
actually, you know what? It's a 0. We did crinkle this one. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
I think it crashes Visual Studio to open up Mac files. You have to right-click and open with Notepad.
Oh, okay, hang on. It's not the first time I've used the tool, don't get me wrong, but Guybrush, if he's in here, I'm logged in as you right now. So that's the reason why it's...
So basically, the gist is Crinkler replaces your linker. So it does a bunch of tricks. So as it builds your executable file, it has different header structures, does packs things differently. For example, when it imports libraries, it doesn't import them the normal way. It uses a technique called import by hash, which saves space.
And I will say that one of the things as well is you do not need really outlandish tools. This is Visual C++ 2005, which is the Express version, so you can actually download that from Microsoft's site, and it does just as well as anything else. Okay, so this is the build. Whatever. Okay. Hopefully this works. Okay, so right now it's performing the make file. Created the link. Oh, dang it. Okay.
I don't think it was set up for linking properly.
Yeah, I think I know why. Hang on a minute.
Do we have any other questions? While he's doing that, I can answer some more if anybody has anything.
Have you guys tried out Crunchy?
You're thinking the Farbrush tool.
That's more designed for 64K. I think it gets better ratios, but it also has a higher header structure, so that the cost to ratio is not good until you get up to larger sizes.
Is there pretty much a totally different model for 64K?
Typically, you don't need to do nasty things like getting rid of the C standard library. You can code more normally and not worry about it as much because you have more space.
1K is the big deal.
Right. 1K of extra space, if it saves you a month of production time, that gives you more time to get more stuff in. Whereas 4K, it probably only takes you a month to fill up 4,096 bytes if you're working, at a fairly decent pace.
All right, that's the definition of foobar. Sorry.
Well,
I'll show you later. Yeah, okay.
he has. I think you said that the 6 compiler, Visual Studio 6 compiler, was not as small as the compiler from Visual Studio 2005.
Well, I think there's two things, because you kind of make this pact because you realize you do have to use a compressor, right? You saw that in the slides, that it just, as soon as you got into like the Crinkler realm, all of a sudden you had something which was ridiculously oversized for the production into possible for 4K, right? Like it was closer to 2K. Now with that though, means that even if you think of the most brilliant way of representing an algorithm that in assembly language would shave off 20, 30, 40 bytes, right? It then becomes suddenly that the patterns become less frequent. You may have less zeros in your code. So all of a sudden, these things that the compressor was easily able to represent in your naive or less elegant solution suddenly blow up, and you end up taking more space. So your uncompressed size can go down, and your compressed size can go up. So with that, it can be a bit of a challenge. But I have, usually what happens is that you start in C++ of some sort. On In4K, there is a gentleman in Scotland that goes by the nickname Old, from Old's Lang Syne. And he uses GCC a great deal. And that is something that he has a great deal of success with. And there's specific linking options that you can make advantage of and so forth. But at some point, you may also go to assembly language, which can require a fair bit of effort. The Northern Dragons hasn't released one in pure assembly in a long time, albeit most of our music code has been in assembly.
The one I'm working on is pure assembly. It's a nightmare. But on the other hand, it's very small, so it's trade-off.
And that's where I think that sort of the naivety of, hey, you know what? Let's make a small production. It won't be that much effort kind of wears, because when you spend your entire weekend creating, 10 pages of finely honed assembly language code to squeak out every single byte, you realize, okay, this was a whole different gig. I didn't know what I was signing up for. Now, of course, 6 years later, I'm still addicted to making them. So. Any other questions? So, going once, twice. All right, thank you. Oh, one last thing. There is what's known as Hugi. It is a disk magazine that is published. The lead editor is in Austria. It is a demo scene staple. They graciously all agreed, I'm also a member of Hugi's staff, that we would use Block Party as an event to release a one-of-a-time, first-time ever custom release on CD-ROM. It's a PC application. You put it in, it auto-runs. If you don't like that, just press Shift. And it will give you a dialog box. And it is a disk magazine, which means that it has an interface. It allows you to see it. It is not yet available on the internet. It will be tomorrow morning. But this is your Block Party exclusive, and they are beautifully printed, care of my own printer, which can print on CDs. So these are an exclusive thing. They don't even have them in Austria yet because I printed them. I took them with me. And I'm going to be sending them all over. The artist that did this is in Israel for the graphics. I mean, I've got this mailing list that's just ridiculous. But anyone who is interested, there is also, you can download, if you go to hugi.scene.org, you can download a Linux viewer. So with that viewer and the Hugi DAT file, you can view it on Linux if you so desire. So this can still be useful to you, and you don't have to press Shift to avoid the auto run. So anyone who would like to see that, please grab a copy from me or Radman. Radman's been flying around with copies. But please don't decide it's just a colorful coaster. Just take it if you are very interested in seeing the content. Thank you again so much for your time. Yes, it's in English.